Hello and welcome to the fifth part of Keywords Cheat Getting Over Hummingbird course. In this lesson, we will talk about some more good SEO practices. So let's get started. Well, Google is the search engine that brings you traffic. So as a webmaster, as a website owner, it's your prime responsibility to make sure that Google is able to access your content, it's able to reach your website, it's able to get all the content in a format that Google understands and it can make best use of. So here are some tips to do that. The first thing that you can do is put your content on Google properties like Google+, YouTube, Blogger. Now that's very obvious. Even though you might not agree that Google+ is a very good social network or it's very popular, then also you should target it because Google has best access to all the Google properties like Google+, YouTube, Blogger, and all the other products it has out in the market like Picasa and everything else. So whenever you put some content on a Google property, Google is able to index it the fastest and the status is clear. Google knows how much of the content it can show in how many places, and the restrictions are minimum because Google wants people to be able to search all its properties fast and well. So if you want to build a presence in the social networks or build a presence around the web in different places, do that by all means, but do not ignore Google properties. Make them a part of your web content strategy and it will certainly help you get ranked faster. The second point I want to talk about is Semantic HTML. That's a very important recommendation from me to you. Now that will require some technical study. You will have to understand what Semantic HTML is, and if you can make use of the latest HTML standards, the HTML5, then the benefits are going to be enormous because HTML5 takes semantics to a new level. It has a lot more detailed control over the semantic part of the HTML standard, and it gives you a lot of control to describe what your content is all about. And if you use the latest semantic standards, you will be able to tell Google exactly what your content is about, how it is structured, and what Google should take from it. That is going to be really useful because Google will use this information to display your content in the search very accurately and very precisely, and it will certainly bring you more visitors as time goes. Then the next format is use Microformat XML to describe your content. Microformat is a standard which is jointly developed by a lot of search engines, not just Google but Yahoo and Bing. They also use microformats, and if you use microformats in your documents, the search engines, including Google of course, will be able to pick up specific information from your data, things like images, things like basic attributes about your article, and it will be able to use this data to display it directly in the search results. Now imagine if you were running a cooking website, for instance, and you used microformat to describe your recipe, the ingredients, the time it takes, and so on, then Google will be able to display all this information directly in the search result, and it would definitely improve your click-through rate. It would definitely give you many more visitors. So study microformats for your niche and try to make use of it. The fourth point I want to talk about is hackable URLs. It's a very simple thing, and in most cases it can be just enabled in your content management system if you're using WordPress, for instance, by just changing a setting. But I'm really surprised by how many people ignore this and they're still putting up URLs like $p=123. Now that is not acceptable. We are in the era when hackable URLs are very important and search engines like hackable URLs. If you're putting up hackable URLs, the search engine does not consider your content dynamic and it will rank it better, and the URL keyword will also have an impact on the search itself. If internet is your business, you can't afford to do a shoddy job on your website. You have to make sure that the website you create or the website you're running meets the technical standards that Google has set that the internet expects from you. And some of these are very basic things that we neglect, which result in lower rankings for the content. The most important, of course, is to validate your HTML, your CSS, and your JavaScript. If you're buying a theme or if you're asking your designer to create your website, no matter what you do, make sure that your HTML, your CSS, your JavaScript is validated, that it maintains the standards, that it has no problems, and Google is able to see that you're creating good quality content on your website. The second thing is to focus on performance. When the Google Spider reaches out to your website, it has a performance measure. It measures how long your website takes to return the content. Now remember, what you feed Google is what you feed the viewers, and how much time you take to feed the viewers is an important measure for Google, because Google wants to return the websites which are delivering the best user experience to the people who visit Google. That's why if your website is very slow, if it is very inefficient, it will be lowered in rankings. It will appear lower in the rankings. So make sure that your website is working fast, you have proper servers, good quality bandwidth, and are prepared to impress Google when the bot visits you. The third point is actually connected to the first 2 points, and that is pare your website code to the minimum. Don't fill it with nonsense data. Don't fill it with CSS that you're not using, JavaScript functions that are never called, HTML that can be written in a more compact fashion. Semantically, make sure you don't make these basic mistakes. Make sure that the HTML is semantic, it's properly written, that you are not using CSS styles inside the text at all the places, or you're not using CSS tags that you never use in the content at all. Do a little audit now and then of your website, see the source code, or ask your designer or your programmer to do an audit sometime, and make sure that all the flotsam, all the bad code is removed. Keep your website running efficiently so that Google will be able to get the content without any problems. It will see that your website is professionally run and deserves to be on a higher position in the search rankings. If you want your website to do well consistently on search, you have to make your website an authority. You have to tell Google that you are a specialist in the niche that you're working in, that you've got the best quality content, and you are consistent with your output. To do that, here are some pointers that you can use. The first is target topics comprehensively. Identify your niche, identify all the different nooks and crannies, and try to be regular with your output, try to be consistent, and try to cover a nice part of your niche, or at least try to specialize in whatever corner you've picked, and make sure you are consistent with good quality articles coming up every now and then. Of course, you've got to update your website regularly with as many good articles as you can, but it doesn't mean that every one of your article has to be a huge top quality amazing piece of article. Of course, if it is an amazing piece of content every time, that's very nice, but if it's not, don't worry. Lead with your good articles and follow with all the other content, but make sure that all of your content is not bad quality. There is a ratio that you can pick up. Maybe you will write 2 good articles and maybe 3 articles which are not amazing, which are not as comprehensive, but make sure the ratio is in the favor of good quality articles. Then the next thing you can do is target a variety of content, not just text. If your blog or if your website is all about text, that's great, that's fine, because you're gonna be ranked on the basis of that. But you should include things like images, videos in your content, and make sure that the images or videos or whatever you put in, they are tagged properly. Make sure you use the alt tags for images. Make sure that the videos that you're putting in are embedded from YouTube, because that will give your YouTube channel a boost. Make sure that whatever content you create on YouTube, it's properly tagged, the titles are good, the description is good, and that the viewership benefits that you generate from your website follow back to your YouTube channel. And the next thing that you could do to improve your authority on Google is to claim authorship. This is a recent, relatively recent, I would say, a relatively recent development by Google, which allows you to claim authorship of an article as an individual, and when Google displays these results from you, it will also display your photograph and your name, and people will be able to relate to you, and they will be able to find more content by you online easily. Now this is a perfect way of making yourself an authority figure on Google, and if you claim your authorship, you're definitely going to get good results. And there is a side advantage. It will also improve your standing on social media, Google+, because authorship is related to Google+. And the next thing you could do is build a community around your site. Try to engage people in as many ways as possible. Get them to comment, answer their comments, and promise them things, tell them about your plans, and discuss things with them. Try to build a community, try to improve the engagement, and if you can maybe use some plugin which has question and answer features or anything similar to that, maybe a forum if you are comfortable running a forum. Do these things to improve the quality and the engagement on your website. It will go a long way in turning you into a great success story on Google. Among the many factors that Google has to assess the value of the site for the visitor, one of the most important factors is how long is the viewer staying on the target website. Are they visiting any other pages there or not? That's why you need to maximize the viewer retention. If your retention rates are high, if your bouncing rates are very low, if your bounces are very low, then Google knows that your content is really valuable, that people want to see more content from you, and conversely you will appear higher on the search engine. This is in fact the only true measure of how much the viewer liked the page that Google has direct access to. Everything else can be gamed, including things like social sharing, but this cannot be gamed. So it's the most authentic source of information for Google. And Google is already using this model very successfully in YouTube, because YouTube is video oriented. It's measuring how long each video is watched, and if a video is watched to the end more often, if the people are staying on a video longer, then Google knows that that video ought to be ranked higher because people want to watch it. So this model is being followed in YouTube very successfully, and it's also being followed in Google search itself. The reason is you have already given a lot of data to Google. We give data to Google whether we like it or not, either by being found on Google. When people search for terms and they find our website on Google and people are referred to a website from Google, Google is able to get some data about us. When the Google bot hits our website, it gets some data about us, and the rest we supply to Google by using tools like Google Analytics. You always have the option to share some information with Google from Google Analytics, and based on what you share, Google is able to make a pretty good estimate of your website. It's able to understand how your website is structured, what parts are more popular and what parts are less popular, and it uses this information undoubtedly in making its search better. That's why you must minimize your bounces. Secondly, don't overload with ads and suggest quality links. These days, overloading the page with advertisements will get you a Panda penalty. So don't fill your page with lots of ads all over the place covering the content. That's not a good idea anymore. Instead, focus on good quality content and do monetize from ads, but don't overdo it. This concludes the 5th lesson of the Keywords Cheat Getting Over Hummingbird course. In the next lesson, we will talk about contextual and semantic keywords and how to find them online. So see you on the next lesson.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and go to technicforce.com for more tools and training.